The secret to self-control. In 1971, as the Vietnam War was heading into its 16th year, Congressman Robert Steele from Connecticut and Morgan Murphy from Illinois made a discovery that stunned the American public. While visiting the troops, they had learned that over 15% of the US soldiers stationed the troops 15% of US soldiers stationed there were heroin addicts. Follow-up research revealed that 35% of the service members in Vietnam had tried heroin and as many as 20% were addicted. The problem was even worse than they had initially thought. The discovery led to a flurry of activity in Washington, including the creation of a Special Action Office of Drug Abuse Prevention under President Nixon to promote prevention and rehabilitation and to track addicted service members when they return home. Lee Robin was one of the researchers in charge in a finding that completely upended the accepted belief about addiction. Robin found that when soldiers who had been heroin users returned home, only 5% of them became re addicted within a year, and 12% relapsed within 3 years. In other words, approximately 9 out of 10 who used heroin in Vietnam eliminated their addiction nearly overnight. This finding contradicted the prevailing view at the time, which considered heroin addiction to be a permanent and irreversible condition. Instead, Robin revealed that addiction could spontaneously dissolve if there was a radical change in the environment. In Vietnam, soldiers spent all day surrounded by queues triggering heroin use. It was easy to access. They were engulfed by the constant stress of war. They built friendship with fellow soldiers who were also heroin users, and they were thousands of miles from home. Once a soldier returned to the United States, though, he found himself in an environment devoid of those triggers. When the context changed, so did the habit. Compare this situation to that of a typical drug user. Someone becomes addicted at homes or with friends, goes to a clinic to get clean, which is devoid of all the environment stimuli that prompt their habit, and then returns to their old neighborhood with all of their previous cues that caused them to get addicted in the first place. It's no wonder that usually you see numbers that are the exact opposite of those in the Vietnam study. Typically, 90% of heroin users become re addicted once they return home from rehab. The Vietnam studies ran counter to many of our cultural beliefs about bad habits because it challenged the conventional association of unhealthy behavior as a moral weakness. If you are overweight, a smoker, or addict, you've been told your entire life that it is because you lack self control. Maybe even that you are a bad person. The idea that a little bit of discipline would solve all our problems is deeply embedded in all culture. Recent research, however, shows something different. When scientists analyze people who appear to have tremendous self control, it turns out that those individuals aren't all that different from those who are struggling instead discipline. People are better at structuring their life in a way that does not require heroic willpower and self-control. In other words, they spend less time in tempting situations. The people with the best self-control are typically the ones who need to use it the least. The easier to practice self-restraint when you don't have to use it very often. So yes, perseverance, great, and willpower are essentials to success. But the way to improve these qualities not by wishing you were a more disciplined person, but by creating a more disciplined environment. This counterintuitive idea makes even more sense once you understand what happens when a habit is formed in the brain. A habit that has been encoded in the mind is ready to be used whenever the relevant situation arises. When Patty Olwell, a therapist from Austin, Texas, started smoking, she would often light up while riding horses with a friend. Eventually, she quit smoking and avoided it for years. She had also stopped riding decades later. She hopped on a horse again and found herself craving a cigarette. For the first time in forever, the cues were still internalized. She just hadn't been exposed to them in a long time. Once a habit has been encoded, the urge to act follow whenever the environment cues reappear. This is one reason behavior change technique can backfire. Shaming obese people with weight loss presentations can make them feel stressed as a result many people return to their favorite coping strategy, overeating. Showing pictures of black and blackened lungs to smoker leads to higher level of anxiety, which drive many people to reach for a cigarette. If you are not careful about cues, you can cause the very behavior you want to stop. Bad habits are auto-catalytic. The process feed itself. They foster the feeling. They try to numb. You feel bad, so you eat junk food. Because you eat junk food, you feel bad. Watching television makes you feel sluggish, so you watch more television because you don't have the energy to do anything else. Worrying about your health make you feel anxious, which cause you to smoke to ease your anxiety, which makes your health even worse, and soon you are feeling more anxious. It is a downward spiral, a runaway train of bad habits. Researchers refer to this phenomena as cue-induced wanting. An external trigger causes a compulsive craving to repeat a bad habit. Once you notice something, you begin to want it. This process is happening all the time, often without without us realizing it. Scientists have found that showing addict a picture of cocaine for just 33 milliseconds stimulates the reward pathway in the brain and spark desire. This speed is too fast for the brain to consciously register. The addict couldn't even tell you what they had been, but they crave the drug all the same. Here's the punchline. You can break a habit, but you are unlikely to forget it once the mental grooves of habit have been carved into your brain. They are nearly impossible to remove entirely, even if they go unused for a quite a while, and that means that simply resisting temptation is an ineffective strategy. It is hard to maintain a Zen attitude in a life filled with interruption. It takes too much energy in the short run. You can choose to overpower temptation. In the long run, we become a product of the environment that we live in. To put it bluntly, I have never seen someone consistently stick to positive habit in a negative environment. A more reliable approach is to cut bad habit off at the source. One of the most practical way to eliminate a bad habit is to reduce exposure to the cue that caused it. If you can't seem to get any work done, leave your phone in another room for a few hours. If you are continually feeling like you are not enough, stop following social media account that trigger jealousy and envy. If you are wasting too much time watching television, move the TV out of the bedroom. If you are spending too much money on electronics, start reading review of the latest tech gear. If you are playing too much video games, unplug the console and put it in a closet after each use.